Okay, it is
If it rings, I'm gonna be embarrassed.
Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 at 3 p.m. Fargo Planning Commission is now called to order. First item is approving order of agenda. No changes to order of agenda. Entertain a motion.
So move. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item we're going to look at is minutes of the regular hearing of February 4th, 2025. Any discussion, or I'll entertain a motion?
I move to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Approval in a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Minutes is approved. Motion. Also, just to be aware, from that regular meeting, the Edgewood Second Edition CUP for group living, which was denied by our commission February 4th Planning Commission, has been appealed by the applicant, and the appeal is scheduled for Monday, March 17th, City Commission agenda. Just to be aware. Let's go ahead and move to public hearing items. First item is hearing on an application requesting a zone change from SR2 single dwelling residential to SR4. Proposed Brecky's 64th Avenue addition located at 1606 and 1648 64th Avenue South. Donald to present.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Donald Kress with the Department of Planning and Development. Our first item, as the Chair has stated, is the Brecky 64th Avenue addition, a major subdivision and zone change. Before we go into this in detail, I'm just going to give you some background on this. This is a little different project than we usually do for a residential project. As you see, the close-up here, just 64th Avenue, University Drive, Davies High School. To locate this, this is the Borrow Pit, we jokingly call Borrow Pit Park here. And here's the water tower that's Fargo on one side and Cass Rural Water on the other. So just to locate that for you. As you see, there are two lots here. They originally had individual residences on them. One has been demolished. This photo is a little out of date. One has been demolished. I'm told the other one will be moved. The applicant can give us more updates on that. But these were developed, as were the adjacent subdivisions, before this was annexed into the city. And these individual residences have just been here for some time. The applicant, Mr. Brecky, has purchased this land and wants to redevelop it with some residential, individual lots residential, as opposed to having one big condominium lot. Just have individual lots, as you'll see on the plat. But it's a challenging property to develop because you can't really get a street through there because there's nowhere for it to go. You put one down, but you run into the Borrow Pit. East to west, there's the existing subdivision and the Cass Rural Water property. So, and to put just a giant cul-de-sac in here, or a regular sized cul-de-sac, would consume a large amount of land. So the applicant has proposed, as we'll see in a moment here, to have a private drive serving all 30 lots, a U-shaped private drive. We don't do this real often on single-family residential lots. We do it on commercial and industrial properties, fairly often. The most recent one your commission approved here was the Grafstrom addition a couple of months ago up on 19th Avenue and 57th Street North. Single family, we don't do it as often, but this is really an infill project. It's surrounded by existing development and it just has lagged behind in development itself. It was never part of anything else. And we thought we'd take a look at it. We've been actually working with the applicant on this for several months. There are some challenges to developing this property, including stormwater and water supply from Cass Rural Water and just getting everything to fit on there. So the applicant's team has been working with city staff for some months on this. So as we go forward, that's just a little background as to where this one is coming from. These infill projects can be challenging. The proposed zone change is from single dwelling residential to SR2 to single dwelling residential SR4. This is to get the development standards of the SR4 zone. So here's the location. We got a few pictures here since it's a big site. Again, just across 64th Avenue, this is the existing residence here, and this is the lot to the east where the last residence was removed recently here. And then these, the cell tower here, this is the Cass Rural Water property. This is a multi-use path that follows through the area there. These are the same pictures from the backside. So this is standing on the shared use path that's behind those properties, looking at the west lot here and diagonally at the east lot over here. And then these residences over here are in the adjacent subdivision. And as you see, there are a large number of trees here on the properties. And then these are just some frontages. Here we're facing westwardly down 64th Avenue, and here are the two lots. And then here we're facing the other way. This light pole here is that light pole there. We're facing easterly, and these are the residences across the street. These are in Martin's Way. The property again is zoned SR2 single dwelling residential. The proposed zone change is SR4 single dwelling residential. The subdivision creates 30 lots with the private drive. That's a pretty busy looking drawing there, Commissioners, so we tried to highlight it here for you, make it a little clearer to understand. There are a lot of easements and other things that are required to be on the plat, but the highlighted version here, the lot lines are the dark red lines and the dashed blue lines are the private drive, which will be known as Brecky Way South. Again, as you see here, there'll be 30 lots. The difference of having a private access easement, you see the lot lines come to the middle of the access easement. So the access easement is actually part of all these lots. This is something that all these individual lots share, and everything on and in that access and utility easement, we call it a 30-foot wide access and utility easement, is managed and maintained by the subdivision. It is not a city street. The city does not own the utilities. Everything is theirs. And there are, one of the things we've been working with the applicant on is there are actually several layers of documentation that deal with this. The applicant, Mr. Brecky, has been working with us to prepare covenants as property owners, a homeowners association would have regarding the maintenance and ownership of those utilities and of that surface of that road. And then from the city side, the city's not part of the covenants. We just want to make sure that things are covered in the covenants. And then from the city side, we have, as we often do for subdivisions, an amenities plan, and an engineering prepares a developer agreement that also goes before the city commission and as a recorded document that talks about, the operation of this and the city's considerations, again, sort of covering the city's considerations here regarding the subdivision. So that's all privately owned. And again, the utilities, they come off 64th Avenue South here, but they'll be privately owned utilities. And you have a laydown item. Those, I believe you got an email yesterday afternoon. We did get 2 letters from nearby residents. And we actually yesterday afternoon got a drop-in visitor who's one of the neighbors who came in and talked to me for a while. And if you had a chance to look at the letters there, the concerns expressed in the letters and by the gentleman who came by were a loss of trees and wildlife habitat, a concern that the property would be overbuilt, concerns about both the density of units as well as the actual number of people who might be living there. How many people per house would that be? How many people would be living there? Concerns about traffic and safety. This road will have 2 accesses onto 64th Avenue South here, an arterial. This has a turn lane in it, but there would be no additional traffic modifications to this road. There'll of course be a stop sign going out here before the sidewalk, but there are no additional traffic lights or lanes or other traffic control devices being installed here. One letter commented about increased school capacity and discussion about the boundary between the existing development over here and the new residential lots. This is single family to single family, so there are no residential protection standards. And I don't know that that's, when the applicant is before you, can describe what's going to be on that boundary there. And so the recommended motion is stated in the staff report and shown on the screen. The applicant's representative, Brian Pattengale of Houston Engineering, the project engineer, as well as Mr. Mike Brecky and his staff are with us this afternoon and may wish to address the commission. And I believe there might be a couple testifiers here from the neighborhood as well, commissioners. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Donald. Commissioners, any questions for Donald?
Yeah, can you go back to the zoning map?
Yes, sir.
So is there anything similar density in that area?
Yes. You may be familiar with, this is called Sundance Square up here. Have you ever been up here? I'll tell you what, if you let me manipulate my PowerPoint here for a minute. I brought a slide for you.
Look at that, Donald.
Yeah, you pay me to be prepared. So this is 58th Avenue South and University Drive South. This is actually two subdivisions combined here. So this done in 2001, 2003. There's 43 units on 6.85 acres, so it's about 6.2 dwelling units per acre. Our density on the proposed project is about 6.5 dwelling units per acre. These are different because these houses are all attached, and the lot sizes vary here. From 4,400 to 7,500. In the proposed subdivision, they're a little more consistent. They're all in the 5,300s. There's a couple big ones on the end. So it's a little different layout, and here this is laid out differently. This lot is actually this street is actually a separate lot, which we don't do anymore. And I'm going to just turn to Mr. Williams. Mark, did you have any other additional comments on this one? Okay. Mark was around when this happened.
These are private streets here then, so this is also managed by the HOA or?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. That's correct. Yeah, these are private streets. And and this has been around for some time. Again, mostly attached here. Interestingly, if you look, this is a nice contrast here. So here, all the lots are individually owned. Here, there are multiple residences too, but it's apparently been condominiumized. So that's all on one single lot. These lots are all on one single lot. So that would be an option if the applicant wanted to do it on his property here, is to combine those two lots into one and just have a giant condo. But he had elected to make individual lots, and he can talk more about that as well.
Really quick before you go off
Yes,
of
ma'am.
that slide.
Okay.
On Sundance Drive, are there sidewalks that connect that back to the main sidewalks, or any interior sidewalks, I mean?
There are apparently not. I'm just looking at this. I have not been out there, at least recently, but there do not appear to be separate sidewalks here, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Photo. There's also another project about like this called Gates of Madison Square that is off of 25th Street and 37th Avenue South. It's a similar layout to this. That was actually created before the current LDC, so I didn't count that one because it's similar, but it's not under the current LDC.
Thanks, Donald. Any other questions?
Yes, related to sidewalks, we pride ourselves trying to move toward making a walkable neighborhoods, all kind of stuff. All of a sudden, you're going to have a very dense area with likely a lot of children in there and no sidewalks. But was there any discussion with the developer about availability of sidewalks?
We did talk about that. I think the developer can comment on that some more, sir, when it is before you. And we did look at that. They just weren't included in this proposal for the subdivision.
And go ahead.
I was just going to ask, kind of regarding public comments and everything on this, was there any discussion during your process about going with an SR3 zoning instead of an SR4 to reduce some of that density?
I don't recall there was such a discussion, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions for Donald?
Donald, do they have any connection on the south side of Brecky Way into that the shared use path to the south? Would there be any direct connection?
Let me get the map here for you, sir. Hang on. So you mean they connect down to this park here? No, there is not a specific access built in. Though, as you see, the private drive here, there is no barrier here. There's not like a separate connection, like a paved connection to that path, but there is not a barrier there. So,
If I may follow up on that, there's also, if I'm reading this correctly, a shared use path to the west?
Yes, sir, that's, let me go to the pictures here. So you see, this is the shared use path here, and then that wraps around the back. So that wraps around the back here.
I
And
find it unfortunate that there doesn't seem to be any connection to that shared use path. And if I'm reading this correctly, it looks like potentially between lots 7 and 8, there's an easement there, would be a place to connect this development to the shared use path to the west, if I'm reading this correctly.
okay, perhaps so. Obviously, they could also just connect off the public sidewalk, but that's outside of the actual subdivision, Commissioner, obviously. And then there's also, just to show that to you, there's also across 64th here, there's a pedestrian refuge island in the middle. There's a marked crosswalk there for that path. That continues northward here for some distance up, going up there. Between.
Maybe what I'll do is ask the applicant up and then you guys can ask questions on what their thoughts were there. Unless any more questions for,
One question for Donald. So the verbiage on the maintenance of like snow removal, that will be approved by the city as in terms of responsibility and accountability to make sure that that's properly taken care of?
Yes, they don't approve the applicant's covenants.
Sure.
But the developer agreement, I believe.
yeah.
Mr. Board,
Okay.
will you address that?
Yeah, it's on the bottom of page 2, it talks about that agreement and what states in there.
Okay,
So the developer agreement will address that from the city side.
perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Any other questions for Donald before I invite the applicant up?
I had just one. We're adding 2 additional access points to the property. Are these guys all within regulation of like the additional access points? Looks like there's a house directly to the right, or it'd be the east on the map. Like this is going to cause a bunch of additional traffic. Like all these access points off a major arterial roadway, 64th. That's not an issue, and there was no variance granted for that.
For this situation, these are existing. There are 2 driveways there now. So they're not really adding an access, although obviously the intensity of the access will be greater once the development is made. Mr. Borboom, that's all right to have that? Okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank you for asking, sir.
Any other questions? Let's go ahead and invite Mr. Brian Pattengale up.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brian Pattengale from Houston Engineering. The plat as presented is sort of what the developer asked us to put together here. First things first is the development is actually geared towards more of a 55 and up type of community. The intent is to put single-story slab on grade, like 2-bedroom, like roughly 1,300 or 1,500 square feet. I forget the exact number off my head, but roughly that for single-family ownership type of thing. So you're talking 2-bedroom, 2-car attached garage type of thing. So a relatively sort of, that's the market they're going for. There's no age restrictions as far as actually purchasing a lot there, but that's sort of the market that the developer is targeting, is that 55 plus, your empty nesters, your sort of retirees that are downsizing into something a little more compact. The utility easements I know is a big concern for a lot of people and stuff. So as part of the development, they're going to institute an HOA for the development. As part of that in HOA, the homeowners, when they purchase their initial lots, will pay into a fee to establish a maintenance and repair fund, basically for the existing infrastructure. We know that's a big concern with people as far as the special assessments and things like that. So for the long-term planning, we're going to start them off with an initial fund for maintenance, snow removal, that kind of thing right off the bat. So if we have a pothole or, there's a water main break or something, there's a pool of cash and stuff that's been established and is given to the HOA as all the lots are developed and build in. They pay into that fund to establish an initial maintenance pool for the development. As obviously as these long-term infrastructure develops over the next 50 years, maintenance issues do pop up occasionally, so it's pre-funded basically is the idea with that. So you're not hitting any of the individual lots with large sort of HOA fees, assessments coming forward. Obviously there'll be ongoing maintenance fees for snow removal and that kind of thing regarding that. Speaking to the easement, Commissioner's questions on the easement regarding between lots and 7, that is actually for the water main feed. This development, while located within the city of Fargo, is actually served by Casserole Water. Their lines are actually located to the west, so we actually have to run a line across the water tower lot to feed our lot. So to accommodate storm sewer and stuff and other utilities, we move that water line and provide an easement there to tie into Casserole Water systems further to the west regarding that. I'm open for questions, and I'm sure Ricky and the developer may want to come up and sort of speak to sort of what their intention is as far as the homes and what they're kind of planning for that aspect of it. They know that a little better than I do regarding that. So,
Commissioners, any other questions for Brian?
Could you address the discussion that you had with the city about sidewalks?
The general discussion was sort of that it's intended to be a low intensity street use. While there is 30 lots there, the intent was that with the surrounding basically multi-use paths on 3 sides of the site, the no parking, so those streets are no parking, would provide enough pedestrian sort of dual use to tie into the surrounding stuff. With, like I said, with the multi-use path to the west, the multi-use path on the north and south side of 66, and then that pedestrian refuge crossing just to the west going north. So they sort of intended to do that dual use. It does get a little cramped if we start putting sidewalks on both sides as far as the general space goes, but the developer Mike can speak to that a little bit too, as well as that goes.
Any other questions?
What are the house setbacks from the private road to the?
We have a full 20 feet, so you can park in your driveway in front of the garages without impacting any of the street uses. Yeah, so that's how we sort of set the lot depths and the layout of the street. Is we want to make sure that if people are parking in front of their garages, they still have full access to the street. They're not overhanging into the access rights there. That was also a concern from fire access from the fire department regarding that.
Has there been any effort to retain any of the mature trees that are on the site?
Unfortunately, I think a large portion of the trees are going to have to be removed. That partially stems from the fact that the lot is located in the floodplain, so we are required to fill it up approximately 3 feet from existing grade to be compliant with the floodproofing code of the current city. So unfortunately, with that, trying to save trees becomes real problematic when we try to raise the entire site 3 feet. Any existing trees you're either going to wind up killing because you're impacting the root zones on the canopies, or you're going to have to cut back the development so far that it basically becomes a park to try and save the trees, unfortunately.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Did you want to add anything? No? Okay, let's go ahead and open public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on this item? I just ask when you go to the microphone, just introduce your name.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Tim Nasham. I live close to this development. First of all, I'd like to say I think they're off to a good start. I think it's a good idea. They're on the right path of making use of this space. I do have a couple concerns about it, and I'm pleased to hear that a lot of you commissioners share those concerns with me. The first thing I'd like to point out is where you look at this street where it loops on the bottom side, just to the south of that is a park. It's the Borrow Pit Park. It's leased by the park district. It's maintained, it's mowed, they empty the garbages, they take care of the park benches. And the concern is that street is directly adjacent to the park. There is no buffer, there is no setback, there is no boulevard that separates that street from the park. Any given day, there is hundreds of people that use that park. I think that's a safety issue, having the street right next to it and so close to the walking path also without any buffer there. I think it's a pretty simple fix. When you look at the park as a whole, all the houses back up to that park, so those backyards create that natural buffer. So if you were to change a couple of those lots to have those backyards up against the park, that would create that natural buffer where you don't have that safety issue anymore, and then possibly you'd be able to save those trees there also. They're very mature trees there. The other thing that I'd like to address is the sidewalk issue. By design, this development has no sidewalks. There's been several meetings about going forward with planning, the new development code and everything, and I've studied a lot of it, and I don't see anywhere where people are asking for neighborhoods without sidewalks. In fact, it's the opposite. People want the walkability, they want the connectivity. I think the planning department really missed out on an opportunity to connect this neighborhood to those walking paths on the west side and the south side. Those paths are right there. I mean, it's just such a huge opportunity to be connected to those. With this being intended for elderly people, it's a big concern not having sidewalks to get to their neighbor's house, to get down the street. I mean, you might as well call it, Broken Hip Boulevard. Not having sidewalks is a big concern, especially when there's going to be snow and everything in there too. So part of this also is with our new growth plan and going forward, you have to really be cautious because what you're approving today in these developments is setting a precedent going forward. And if you approve a neighborhood without sidewalks today, a neighborhood that has private streets that encroach on parkland, the next developer is going to come in here and say, I'm not going to do sidewalks either. So just be very cautious what you do there. It sets the precedent for the next one. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Make sure you state your name for the record.
Hi, I'm Mike Brecky. I guess I don't have a lot to say. This is kind of new for us. When I bought this land, I only was planning on doing the first 2.5 acres. Well, then I somehow got notified by the neighbor and we ended up with it. We're not that big builder. We really do care what we're doing. And when we did this design, getting the engineers involved, and our whole thought on this was something really neat for the city of Fargo. I mean, if you drive around town here, there'll be places where there's townhomes, there's condos, there's beautiful homes and a building so big next to it. I mean, we really thought about it. And then I heard some talk about the trees. There's ash trees there, you guys, and we really do care. We want to get trees back in there. And those ash trees aren't in good shape. There are some gorgeous evergreens, but they are in a bad spot. And like Brian said, you don't have any choice on that area. Could we do different size homes on there? Probably. It's a gamble to do it, so it's almost got me thinking, should we look at townhomes, something different. But what we're here to do is a beautiful thing. And by not having sidewalks either, I can take you through town, and you guys know there's a lot of areas on this private road. You guys know Maple Valley. We did a few over there. Beautiful homes. There's not sidewalks in front of those. I mean, they're gorgeous and they love them. Most of the people are 55 and older. Doesn't mean you can't be younger, but it's been a neat thing. So I guess what I'm here to say is our purpose for this is to try to do the right thing. And I'm on site every day. I'll be 62. I'm here for a reason. It ain't just because of the money. I want to do a neat thing for Fargo. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. So I'm really open for anything you guys have to say or anybody else. Everybody has rights, but I just want you to know we are here for one reason, to do the right thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Anybody else wish to speak?
I'm not a public speaker, so forgive me if I'm a little nervous.
It's okay.
I'm the next door neighbor to this.
Just state your
and-
name for the record.
Whoop, Clarence Wisman.
Thank you.
I live just east of this place. One of my concerns is they're going to change the floodplain, increase the grade. Well, then that's going to flood half of my yard because I got a low-lying area there. The other part was the density of how many houses are going in there. When I first talked to Mr. Brecky, he said that, they were going to build some houses there. I was under the impression it was going to be like 12 to 18 houses. My neighbors across the street have talked to me and my neighbor next door, and we are concerned about the traffic and how many people are going in there. I don't know what else to say about it, but my main concern is the density, and the grade is going to make the water flow into my yard. So I would appreciate if somebody would consider that, because our house has been there since 1960. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody?
Real quick, just Brian again, with the Houston, just to address the drainage concerns on that. We are currently sort of looking at the utility situation. The intent is to, while we are raising the lots, we are providing storm sewer along the rear lots for both the west and east sides of the property. So yeah, actually we're gonna want a better drainage out there than it currently is right now. Right now, the site's relatively flat, really doesn't drain anyway. North-south, it's just kind of a large 4-acre flat spot. So yes, we are addressing drainage concerns. I'm aware of not putting water onto other neighbors' property, so we are addressing that as a concern. Just want to address the concerns of the residents and any questions that may pop up from the commissioners on that.
Thank you.
I just had a question for you regarding the construction of the street. Is it just going to be like flat or concrete, or is it going to have curb and gutter?
The intent right now is a standard 26-foot curb and gutter section, so it'll be concrete street with curb and gutter on it, so it's a well-defined, well-drainage. We'll have storm sewer in the street and everything.
So there won't be any runoff into that park then on the north?
No, on the south side, no. It'll all be contained within our site, and then we're currently, as part of the developer's agreement, if you lead through that, we'll be draining to the existing city stormwater pond to the south.
And have you guys talked with the Parks District about connection to that path on that south side?
We haven't talked with the parks as far as a connection goes. It is certainly something that we can look at as far as constructing the connection. That pathway is about 60 to 70 feet south of that. It's a little deceptive where that property line is. From the south property line to the actual pathway, there's a large green area right now with existing trees and stuff that's up there. So we are making sure we preserve and don't impact that park space or the pond space negatively up there.
And then one last question, sorry.
We're in hearing. Should I close hearing and then reopen back up questions? Okay. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Okay, let's close public hearing. Now go ahead and ask your question.
Sorry. And then along 64th, will the existing sidewalk remain?
Yes, the existing multi-use path is there. We're still working out some connection points as far as the grading and design work with all that associated with it. But yes, that existing, I want to say it's 6 or 8 foot multi-use path that's on the south side will remain.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hearing is closed. Commissioners, let's save discussion for after the motion. So we'll entertain a motion, and then after the motion in the second, then there'll be discussion.
I'll make the motion to approve per staff's recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, commissioners?
I've got lots of thoughts. You're right, there are a lot of properties around Fargo where there are no sidewalks, and it's really disappointing. As a citizen that enjoys those sidewalks, it's really frustrating, especially if you have kids with. My kids have gotten older now, but I had younger kids trying to push strollers, trying to ride bikes. It is really frustrating when you get to those developments and all of a sudden that stops. Unless there's language written into the development agreement, it might be somebody 55 and older, which I just realized are almost my people, but it also might be very young families. And so we have to plan for both, right? And creating developments in our beautiful community that don't celebrate community, connecting us to each other, sidewalks are such a baseline important component of that it hurts my heart to even think that we can be doing that. And I know there are appropriate moments, but I'm excited to know that we can have this conversation in the future land development code creation to potentially right some of those, in my opinion, wrongs. So I look forward to that. You said you want to do the right thing, and I appreciate that because I think that there are some things that could easily be implemented into the plat that really I think could go a long way. If you go to the plat and look at that southern boundary, even just reducing the size of lots 9 and 22 so that you shift that Brecky Drive south on the south end of the U, if you will, of that drive, and allow for a landscape buffer, allow for some kind of breathing room to have a more respectful edge adjacent to that park, I think could be a really nice gesture to show, again, that wanting to really do it right for the community. You could even potentially narrow lots 8 and 23 a bit to provide a little more of a landscape buffer. I appreciate, and I love trees. It's hard when we're trying to also, do the right thing for, flood protection and so forth. So I certainly understand some of the fundamentals of why that's challenging and can appreciate that. And I'm grateful to hear that the drainage is being considered on the adjacent properties because that's meaningful. The last thing we want to do is create a new development and then harm the existing people that have been there for decades. So to me, it really, I would hope that there could be a much more in-depth dialogue about the opportunities with the sidewalk conversation. That's just, to me, that's a really important conversation point. Thank you.
I just wanted to bring up one point. So you guys are concerned about connecting to that walking path. If it connects to this community, there's no sidewalk to connect to it. You also can't park anything on the street. There's no parking. So what's the point of connecting to that path if they can't park near the entryway or they're gonna have to walk down the street to connect to that path? So we have people walking in the street to get to that path. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's the right way. If that's the biggest concern is connecting the paths, there's no sidewalks, there's no parking.
Yeah, I've got 2 points, and Commissioner Jordan already pointed this out about possibly a landscape buffer. I'm looking at kind of an aerial on my phone. It does look like there is.
Donald, can you bring that up?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
There's kind of a natural landscape buffer anyway from the start of the path to the south, to that south property line of, I think Mr. Pattengill said about 60 feet. So that includes some trees that are on the park side of that property line that would remain. So there is that landscape buffer. I'm a little bit less concerned about that, but what I am more concerned about is the precedent that someone had mentioned about approving this without sidewalks, setting that precedent for future developments similar to this, which I know in the staff's report, they want to use this as kind of an experiment for going forward for different types of ways to develop properties. So I do think that connectivity piece, even within the development within a public or a private street, should be something it's not something that just because it's private, it should, they have the option of providing it or not. That path does go to the north. It goes to Bennett Elementary, and you can imagine maybe there's a young family in here that they want to make sure they're always walking on the sidewalk and set a good example. So they can continue right up onto that path. So I do think we need to be cognizant of how we approve or deny this project as far as what is that precedent set.
Well, I just want to point out, older people walk too. And I think it is an important thing. And I don't, my intention is to vote against the motion because of that. Now, whether or not the motion passes, I would encourage the developer, who I think wants to do the right thing. I like the idea of this development. I think it's a great infill project. I think it's the kind of thing we need to do in some of these places, redevelop them. But I would hope that if this motion does pass, you'll find a way to accommodate some of the concerns that have been raised here in how you put it together.
May I ask the applicant a question?
I would, tell me procedurally, we have a motion on the table, can we?
Yeah, it's your call, Chair.
Can the streets be made any narrower than planned? Because if that would be possible, there would be more room for sidewalks without impinging on the lot size unnecessarily.
If you're gonna respond, you'll need to go to the podium and.
Brian Pattengill with Houston Engineering again. Potentially there's some review that we could narrow up the streets. We'd have to talk with fire and that, because that does bring up some concerns, potentially if you get too narrow for fire concerns. Traditionally, you're going to want, probably about the narrowest you'd want to go is 22 feet. That's going to give you two 11-foot drive lanes. Anything narrower than that's going to become problematic for sort of head-on traffic. I mean, it's not like it's a through street or it's only local driveway access. But anything traditionally narrower than about 22 feet is going to get really tight for just head-to-head traffic. So there is potentially, depending on fire's opinion, concerns as far as access go. We'd have to discuss that with the city staff regarding that, as far as narrowing the streets up narrower than we have them right now.
Would this have to be head-to-head traffic? It could be a one-way street and therefore narrower.
Minimum width for fire access roads are 20 feet by code. So at a minimum, we'd have to have a 20-foot wide street. That's a fire access code. It's a provision of the fire code. It's something we'd have to look at from a technical aspect if that's possible, and also with the developer as well, as far as one-way circulation. Potentially, it's an option which we could explore a little more, but it's not a guarantee at this point. I can't say one way or the other if it works or not.
Thanks. I don't want to negotiate this here at the meeting, but I think to explore some possibilities to provide for sidewalks would be certainly worthwhile.
Can I ask really quickly, I know 24-foot wide is kind of standard. Why 26? Was that just for the fire department consideration?
It's part of fire consideration to make sure it's wide enough for fire access. You lose a little bit with snow in the general in the winter. It's a comfortable width for sort of access of pulling in and out of driveways too, type of thing. You can, like I said, you can narrow it up. Traditionally, we try to go 24 is kind of like a comfortable. It's like when you're backing out and pulling new backing movements out of driveways and things like that. 24 feet is comfortable for everyone to sort of pull in and out with vehicles. Like I said, so 26 is a little more comfortable. You know, so you're not driving up on curbs and stuff. So that's kind of where that dimension comes from, is fire access plus usability. So like I said, there's some discussion we can have with the developer and city staff to potentially look at a thinner roadway section, but I can't sort of that. Like I said, I can't sign off on that right now.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Madam Chair, I realize there's a motion on the floor, but I'm not quite sure the procedure, but could I make a superseding motion to continue
No,
this?
we have to vote on the motion. If the motion does not pass, then you can propose a new motion. We have a motion on the table to accept the findings as staff report. So we can definitely vote if you guys are done with discussion and want to vote to see where we are.
If I may, do you want me to do some clarification at this point right now? I think staff would recommend that you continue it till the next month. When we looked at this application, we're looking at a growth plan and densities. This is along a major arterial, and usually low to medium density residential is an SR4 type zoning district. This site developed this way would be about 7.2 units per acre, which is less dense than SR3 zoning. So it's very compatible with what that corridor looks like. In addition, most of the new developments around that area have also been zoned SR4. The unique thing about this is it's being divided into 30 lots for financing purposes for the end user. This property as one lot could be condominiumized and built like this by right. I know in the land development code rewrite, we're looking at how we deal with private accesses and how that looks, but this isn't all that different from the past private developments that we've done in the past. If, I know there's a motion on the table, but if you were to continue it, we could work on the sidewalk a little bit more with the developer and see if there's some sort of resolution. I know that sidewalk in private developments brings a whole other issue based on it being private property and not necessarily a public space per se when it comes to insurances and who is allowed to access that property and who's not allowed to access that property, but we could certainly look at that. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Mark?
Yeah. So you mentioned SR3 zoning. Is that off the table then, or is that something that could be looked at as far as financing and whatnot for the owner?
When we're working on this type of density, the SR4 zoning setbacks are easier to work with than the SR3 setbacks. Mainly the front yard setback. It allows in the rear and the front to be a little bit more, have a little more open space with a layout like this.
Right. So it was mentioned that the setback is 20 feet, correct, for this development, which would fit into the SR3 zoning for the front at that 20 feet as well. I'm just thinking more about the density of this, small neighborhood, if you will. And that's the concern that just kind of keeps replaying in my mind is just how many houses are going within this property.
This proposal is 7.26 units per acre and SR3 is 8.7 units per acre.
Sure.
So this is less than SR3 density.
Any other questions? So just to confirm, we need to vote on the motion on the table, correct?
That is, unless one of the people that made the motion would like to alter it and go to continuance.
Yeah, correct, because I want to clarify, if you don't recant the motion, if you vote no, that's an automatic denial of the application. So right now you have a motion to approve, if I'm not mistaken. And so if you vote no to counter the approval, it's an automatic denial. If you want 30 more days for staff and applicant to work together, then one of the persons that, I think Tommy or Commissioner Schmidt, would want to make that motion to withdraw. And then Scott can walk you through that process.
Sure. Thanks, Scott.
Oh, with that, I'll make the motion to withdraw my previous motion and continue until the April Planning Commission meeting.
That's April 1st, sir.
April 1st? That's April Fool's
April
Day.
Fool's Day?
Yes.
Not a joke. No, I'm just
No, that's true, ma'am.
Okay, I have a new motion.
Do we need to withdraw in second?
Second, yeah.
I'll withdraw the second.
Okay,
I'll second the motion then.
okay. So we have motion and a second to continue. Do you need any more information on specifically continuance? Okay. Any discussion?
Just to recap perhaps what I think the discussion is, the concerns, street width, sidewalks, landscape buffer at the south end and connection to the shared use paths. Are there other concerns?
That sums it up.
Any other discussion? Miranda, please take the roll.
Bly,
Aye.
Betlock,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Cecil,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Georgie,
Aye.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Hass,
Aye.
Mose,
Aye.
Tossa.
Aye. Motion carries. Item number 2, hearing on application request plat of Urban Plains Medical Park, second edition, replat of lot 6, block 1, located 4651 30th Avenue South. Donald to present.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Item 2 here is Urban Plains Medical Park Second. Just to locate, here's 32nd Avenue South, 45th Street, the old Mexican Village here. And the proposal here, lot is undeveloped, but actually under construction at this time. We only have one picture for this one, as opposed to 6 for the last time. Here we're just looking northwesterly, and you can see the structure under construction here. These are all in the adjacent subdivision. There's a roundabout here at the intersection of Brant Drive South and 30th Avenue South. The current zoning is LC, limited commercial with a conditional overlay. That zoning will carry through to the new subdivision. Subdivision fairly straightforward here, just dividing a lot more or less in half. And the only other thing the subdivision does is provide for a break in the negative access easement. Just to refresh the commissioners, the negative access easement is an imaginary line that prohibits access directly from the street, because we want to control access. But the applicant has proposed a break here in the access easement, 36-foot wide break. Staff has reviewed it and found that that's acceptable to have that there. So they'll have a shared access for the lots here. This is already in place by an existing easement. And then they'll have an access here off Brant Drive South. So pretty straightforward. The applicant, Nate Volmuth of Goldmark Design and Development, is with us this afternoon. There he is. May wish to address the commission. The staff's recommendation is stated in the staff report and shown on the screens. That concludes staff's presentation for Urban Plains Medical Park, second edition.
Thanks, Donald. Commissioners, any question for Donald? Seeing none, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, commissioners. Any questions you have, feel free. Other than that, I don't have anything to add.
Any questions for Mr. Volmuth? Thank you. Let's go ahead and open up public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on this item? Anybody wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. Commissioners? Do I have a motion?
Make the motion to approve per staff's recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Miranda, go ahead and take the roll.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Betlock.
Aye.
Haas.
Aye.
Cecil.
Aye.
Mose.
Aye.
Glide.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Georgie.
Aye.
Stoffren.
Aye.
Tossa.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, commissioners.
Item 3, hearing on application requesting plat of Valley View 11th Edition, Lot 2, Block 1, located at 3889 51st Street South. Chelsea.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chelsea Leverson with the Department of Planning and Development. Agenda item 3 is Valley View 11th Edition. It is a minor subdivision. It's located at 3889 51st Street South. It is just south of Independence Elementary. For reference, we have 40th Avenue South, Veterans Boulevard, right here, Cheyenne High School in West Fargo, and then the Osgood Hornbachers is right over here. The top photo is facing northwest from the intersection of 40th Avenue and 51st Street. And the bottom photo is facing southwest from the intersection of 51st Street and 38th Avenue. There is a previously approved permit for a daycare that is being constructed on the proposed Lot 2. Right here. The property is zoned LC, limited commercial, with a conditional overlay. No zone change is proposed, and the conditional overlay will carry through with this subdivision. The applicant is requesting a minor subdivision, a replat of Lot 2, Block 1, Valley View 9th Edition, to be entitled Valley View 11th Edition. The subdivision will consist of 2 lots, 1 block. There is a shared pond easement in the center, as well as shared utility and storm easements on the west side and in the center. as well as a proposed negative access easement on the southern side of 51st Street. There are existing 10-foot utility easements along the northeast-south property lines and an existing negative access easement along 40th Avenue South. The negative access easements will prohibit vehicle access from 40th Avenue and part of 51st Street. To date, staff have received 2 inquiries regarding the property, one of which came today, with no noted concern. Staff's recommendation is for approval as stated in the staff report and on your screen. Andrew Thill with Lowry Engineering is here if you have any questions for him. Thank you, commissioners. That concludes staff's presentation.
Thanks, Chelsea. Commissioners, any questions for Chelsea? No questions. Letting you off easy. Applicant have anything to add? Just state your name for the record, please.
I am Andrew Thill with Lowry Engineering. I'm here to answer questions. I do not have anything else to add.
Any questions for the applicant, commissioners? No questions. Thank you. Let's go ahead and open up public hearing. Anybody wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, let's go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners?
I move to approve the motion of the staff report.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Go ahead and take the roll, Miranda.
Gly.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Hess.
Aye.
Stoffren.
Aye.
Mose.
Aye.
Georgie.
Aye.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Betlock.
Aye.
Cecil.
Aye.
Tassa.
Aye. Motion carried. Other items. Thanks, Chelsea. Jim Gilmore will present. These are non-hearing items, but we will take roll call on each of these items. Jim, we have 3 new commissioners. If you just want to kind of take us through what we're looking at.
Yeah, these only probably come to the planning commission maybe only once a year, sometimes only twice a year. And so what it is a renewal plan where the city is providing some tax increment financing assistance and other incentives to encourage redevelopment of these sites. And one of the sections of the North Dakota Century Code is that prior to the city commission taking any action on these, the planning commission has 30 days to review and comment on it, on really whether or not it's consistent with the comprehensive plan and really other plans of the city. So, you know, the focus isn't on the zoning. Actually, in both cases, they're not changing the zoning. The focus of the redevelopment is we're dealing with providing developers with some assistance to deal with extraordinary costs. You know, if you're on the edge of town, you don't have to generally demolish anything. You don't have to clean up the site. You know, the cost of acquisition of the property is probably not unusual, and you probably don't have to redo any public facilities. Where with these infill projects, you do have to do all of that. And so, again, it's kind of that focus whether or not it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. And of course, our comprehensive plan has always talked about promoting infill and even go 30, trying to get more density, get more development within the city. So, again, the role is not to look at the incentives and say, oh, this is too much or too little. Our Economic Development Committee has already addressed that. And in most cases, you don't have to deal with the zoning. It's, I think in both cases, those things are already taken care of. So I'll go through the first one is Lennon Lofts. It's located just north of the downtown. One thing that I would look at when we're working with developers is, you know, is it really consistent with the long-term land use plan? You can see the subject property is within the downtown, and it's in an area that's been identified as, you know, future residential. So in terms of the existing conditions, we have 2 buildings. Both are vacant. You can see on the house the boarded up windows on the second floor. This building and the 6-unit apartment building, there was a fire, I think, a little over 4 years ago. It's been vacant since that time. The owner at the time of the fire. We sold it to another developer who's been looking at how to make this, feasible to do some additional housing near the downtown. Just some more closer pictures. You can see the blighted conditions, the obviously where there's a burned out apartment on the 3rd floor. I think the building's about 100 years old. Didn't know they had that style then, but at least according to assessor's records. So the future redevelopment, again, it's going to be this would be a 3-story building, parking on the main floor, 22 apartments. It'll actually, this particular plan has not been reviewed by planning. They'll also go through this regular site plan review process. There's a downtown mixed-use zoning district that regulates, building materials, doesn't allow, requires some transparency on the main floor. And in the downtown, there's no setbacks or real limitations on density. This particular, I don't know, I guess we didn't have all the plans in there, but be happy to answer any questions on this particular renewal plan. So the recommended motion is to recommend to the city commission that this renewal plan is consistent with your plan. Again, it's zoned downtown mixed use, and it shows in the land use plan it's consistent with that residential. Be happy to answer any questions.
Jim, since the TIF is just for taking down the property and cleaning it up, right? Because they obviously haven't come through planning or improvement of this building that they have. Is that what happens? So if this TIF gets approved, it's to remove all the property to clean the site up and have it ready for build then?
It's probably it's 3 things. One, it helps reduce the cost of the land because they're buying buildings here that have some value, although not much. So it writes down the cost of that building to the land value. Secondly, as you mentioned, the demolition, there's some administration. But then the only public facilities really related to this are killing out the existing sewers and redoing the sidewalks on the street.
But the TIF is just attached to this project. It's not the building, whatever the building is going to be a different discussion going forward. Right? Because is it contingent on this building being built, or is it contingent that they're going to have some kind of building built?
It's contingent on this particular 22-unit building that would be outlined in the renewal plan.
Okay. Is that how we do all the TIFs that way?
Yeah, this is they're all a little different. These 2 are single parcel TIFs. We've had some that are more area-wide. Those become more complex with multiple activities. This is just a single TIF, and I'll kind of get into probably more details than you want, but this is also in the Renaissance Zone. So there's a Renaissance Zone application. What the developer is requesting is really pending approval of the 5-year in the Renaissance Zone. There would be another 5-year TIF, which would just act as another property tax exemption. It would run for 5 years. Our Economic Development Incentives Committee looked at that request, send it through their financial review, and realize that this really is unfeasible without that level of assistance. So, the question really for the city is, do you want to continue to look at this, or should we, move on and get some new development on this site?
Jim, I'm sorry if I missed it, but did you say, are these market rate apartments, or is there any subsidized housing or low-income units as part of this?
They're all market rate apartments.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Go ahead and take the roll.
I think you need a
Got
motion.
to make a motion.
Oh, yes, we do have to make a motion.
I'll make
Yes,
a
we do.
motion to recommend to the city commission
We have
proposed plan.
I'll second it.
motion and second. Discussion?
I actually have 2 concerns about this application. The first one is an overarching concern, I think, because for this particular project, it's too late. But to the extent that we incentivize projects like this, we are incentivizing developers to buy properties, allow them to deteriorate to the point where they must be replaced, and thereby destroying historic neighborhoods of Fargo. And I think in the future, it's very important that we be very careful about incentivizing the destruction of the city's historic neighborhoods. With this particular project, Chapter 10 of the Go 2030 plan, the Neighborhood Infill and Development chapter, talks about establishing or creating attractive and welcoming neighborhoods, and says the design of infill developments should improve the aesthetics of the area. Now, I think one can say that this building improves the aesthetics of a deteriorated building, but for this quality of architecture, we are incentivizing with taxpayer dollars. I don't think this project is of sufficient architectural quality to deserve taxpayer subsidies. Thank you.
I guess the only response I'd have is it does meet the requirements of the downtown mixed-use zoning district, at least, when the final plan comes in. And so as you look at the, your update of the land development code, perhaps you want to make some modification to that in the future. But these are the rules today.
Any other discussion, commissioners? Go ahead and take the roll now. Thanks.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Betlock,
Aye.
Georgie,
Aye.
Cecil,
Aye.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Mose,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Glide,
No.
Hess,
Aye.
Tossa.
Aye. Motion carried.
Move on to, this is a renewal plan, and I know this is actually an update of a renewal plan that was first adopted by the City Commission in 2018. It deals with properties on 18th Street North near NDSU. There's a university mixed-use zoning district in this particular area. This particular area west of T-Loft has seen a lot of redevelopment. As older houses become deteriorated and they're acquired by developers, and there's had been such a demand for student-oriented housing, the old buildings have been removed and replaced by new, higher density, buildings, primarily occupied by students, although not exclusively by students. The University Mixed-Use Zoning District was created by the city, I think, following some neighborhood planning, and really was trying to encourage more development in this particular part of the Roosevelt neighborhood, with the goal of having less students move into single-family homes in other parts of the Roosevelt neighborhood, and other kind of open some areas that were already rental dominated to higher levels of development, so there could be more housing near the students, again, without people kind of spreading out into the neighborhood. So in 2018, the City Commission approved a renewal plan for this and several other blocks in this neighborhood, and really encouraged the developer to go ahead and get started to take down properties were really not livable. And this particular block, there were 7 properties, and in 2018, the developer demolished 2 of those properties. Because the renewal plan was in place, those demolition costs are eligible for tax increment financing. There wasn't a guarantee, but certainly it was documented, so those costs could be done. And the city wanted to see houses removed rather than developers to hold on to them for 5 years so that they could prove there was blight in the area. And so this, one of the things we look at, and this is the area kind of west of T-Lot, all of this area, if you go in here, I don't think you can find 12 owner-occupied homes. It's all generally absentee landlords, higher density apartment buildings, and this has been one of the focus areas of some of the redevelopment. And so we don't do that type of redevelopment out here. to the east, it is now encouraged. And so when you adopted the core neighborhood plan, or when the city adopted the core neighborhood plan, you can see the future land use for this area is multifamily residential. These pictures, I'll kind of go through these. You can see pictures from 2018. Again, some of these homes were real deteriorated then. The developer, held on to them. Those that were still could be occupied, they continued to rent them out. I just want to respond to Commissioner Gly's comment about developer acquiring property and letting it go. When you look at the history of the ownership of these properties, this particular developer acquired these homes when they're already in bad shape. Didn't try to improve them since then, but these were blighted. This particular developer didn't create the blight. They more bought the property in anticipation of redevelopment and higher density like the city was trying to encourage. And you kind of see the kind of dilapidated homes. I think only one of them was, not in too bad a shape, but they were all single family. I think there were two of them were for duplexes. This is the site now, again, because that plan in 2018 was adopted, developer had already gone ahead and as encouraged by that plan, the homes have all been removed. And so the site is ready for them to start building in April. I think you've probably seen this plat. I think this came through the Planning Commission relatively in the last year, maybe in the last few months, where all the lots were combined from 7 lots into 1 lot. This is the proposed apartment building. It would be a 5-story building, main floor parking, again, allowed by the University Mixed Use zoning district. The top left picture is kind of looking to the west. You can kind of see there's an amenity up here where you can kind of get probably a nice view of the campus. And this is the view towards the alley. There'll be, in addition to the interior parking, there would be surface parking. This is an area looking towards the campus, or actually this is an area looking up 18th Street towards 12th Avenue and 18. And again, I think this is consistent with the GO 2030 comprehensive plan. We're trying to get more housing that would be kind of student orientated. Again, this is market rate housing. And so the recommendation is to, find that this is consistent with the GO 2030 plan. Like the previous application, the TIF assistance goes toward demolition from the land costs and public facilities, which is primarily utilities and the public right of way. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jim. Questions for Jim?
I lived in one of those houses in 1992, and it needed to be demoed then. So what's taking you so long? Thank you.
No questions? Go ahead and entertain a motion.
Make the motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, go ahead and take the roll, Miranda.
Georgie,
Aye.
Hess,
Aye.
Mose,
Aye.
Gly,
Aye.
Cecil,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Betla,
Aye.
Stoffren,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Tosser.
Aye. Motion carries. Do we have any updates or anything from our LDC meetings or anything?
No, I think we had some really good meetings last week, and I think we got a lot of consistent information out of all sorts of different sides of the city and the community, which was I was really happy with seeing that, because I think we're not that far off of coming to a consensus and going forward with getting this rewritten. We'll keep you informed. I think they're coming back in May. We'll keep you informed as to the next meetings. I appreciate everyone being involved in that.
Yeah, thank you for taking time, commissioners. Do you have anything, Mr.? No?
Not this time.
Not
I'll save
this-
it.
All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting adjourned.